It's a work session. Just want to inform you that we're doing the work session on the budget. We're giving you a structurally balanced budget.
Probably need a prayer though.
Yeah, we might need a prayer. Keep in mind, anything you add to this budget, you have to take away from somebody else, so. And Ms. Elwine will explain that further as we get going. I'll turn it over to the president, council president, Mr. McCarthy. It's all yours.
All right, well, budget time again. Well, Stephanie's got a little bit of overview she said she wanted to go over before we started, so we'll let her do her thing, and then after that, if we have questions, we'll fire away at her, I'm sure.
Yep.
Or the mayor.
So I'll just start by saying, I did have a proposed budget schedule, but council will go through that at the end of the meeting to see if that schedule matches what you're thinking you're wanting to do. The only thing I'm going to point out for just the general public or anybody listening is that, of course, this is just how the budget's being proposed from the mayor's office to council. It's going to change throughout the course of the budget hearings. And council always has the right to add to these dates or take things away from the work session dates. The actual hearings on the budget are scheduled according to our city ordinance. The first reading is November 6th, and the second reading and adoption is November 20th. So that's just my starting statement. I thought it'd be helpful to just give council an overview of where we're at with our current budget, which would be 2023. We're currently at 67% of our budget year. As you can see, going down the fund revenue, our general fund revenue is above that projection. Park is pretty close, and then the rest, except for golf course, is way over. The rest are a little bit below what that percentage of the year is. When you look at expenditures, again, we're at 67% of the budget year, and most of our budgets are below that amount, or right at that amount, which means so far, you got to also keep in mind that a lot of our expenditures that are more expensive are happening at the beginning of the year because they're capital purchases where sometimes our revenue is spread out over the year. A couple other things to just note, the 2023 budget does include an $811,000 contingency. Currently, we have about $550,000 of that allocated already. Just an example, some of the things that we use that for, it's unanticipated repairs that come in. We had a boiler repair, both at the airport and the Corn Palace. We had to replace some tires on the ladder truck. We have just found out an AC problem at the cemetery offices. We had some items that came in above the budget when they were bid. Compensated absences, that would be when an employee leaves and are paid out of their paid leave. We had a controller that we had to repair at the library on the HVAC system, some nuisance abatements, stuff like that that happened. And of course, you are all aware that we had added snow removal expenses in 23. So we have an amount set aside for the hauling of snow that we did, as well as the additional snow removal costs. With that being said, I said that we have about $550,000 so far of that contingency allocated. We're also in reviewing the health insurance fund. As you're aware, we did a 5-month premium holiday this year. That is so that we're not growing the fund above what our current goal was. We actually, for the last 2 years, have been trying to spend that back down a little bit because we have reached and exceeded the initial goal. I did a quick summary today on our software, and in the general fund, I looked at how much was remaining in those health insurance budgets right now for the rest of the year. It's about $800,000. So a lot of those items that I said that are contingency items will probably be absorbed through those departmental health insurance that are unspent. It just kind of depends. We won't know until we get through the year. Either way, we know a portion of that's going to be remaining unspent at the end of the year. We talk a lot about sales tax, and I just wanted to point this out as the reason why we spend a lot of time talking about sales tax. Sales tax is the majority of our revenue that we use for just our day-to-day general fund operations. Historically, the city of Mitchell has lagged behind other first-class municipalities in the percentage that our sales tax is increasing annually. Because of that, we've been taking a really conservative approach to our revenue. In 2021 and 2022, it was great that we saw sales tax growth. Prior to that, we had 2 years of decline. 2022, if you look at that year, That was one of our first years that we were actually above the average for other cities. You can see the average was 8.62. In 2022, we were 9.31. The other year was in 2018, we were 4.25. The average was 3.85. Every other year, we've lagged behind. Oh, I lost my mouse. Hold on. And just if you want to look at what that looks like in dollars, the city of Mitchell, we've always received a large amount of sales tax revenue compared to what the size of our community is. So if you look at the city of Mitchell in 2017, we were collecting $11.8 million in sales tax revenue, where Huron was at $7 million. Well, there you can see their average increase or change per year has been 460,000, where ours is 562. With us being that much higher in sales tax, we should have been having a higher dollar growth annually as well than what we've been seeing. So the big one that I like to look at too is if you look at Yankton, because that's one we're pretty close with now. They were at 9.8 million, we were at 11.8, and their average increase annually has been 628,000, where we're at 562. So just what it looks like in dollars for you. The other thing that I do point out often is that when you wonder, City of Mitchell is able to provide some amenities and at a higher amount than what other cities our size do. If you look at Pierre, even Brookings, Huron, Vermilion, Spearfish, Yankton, they don't have full-time professional fire and EMS. We've been able to fund things like that because we've been collecting tax revenue that's really larger than what our population size has been. So it's important that we continue to capture a larger percentage of sales tax because we're funding more amenities than cities our size are maybe normally funding. So obviously nobody wants to see a decline in quality of life, so that's why we want to see that sales tax continue to grow. I do also, you guys get this report, so you see it all the time, but I do track annually what our sales tax dollar amount and changes have been by category. I thought it was interesting, or another reason to show why retail sales are important for our community and wholesale trade. Those two were the highest growth for us from last year to this, or from 21 to 22. So retail trade increased 544,481, and wholesale trade increased 261,926. So that's $700,000 of the total growth that we saw from 21 to 22 in sales tax. So when you hear me talking about those things with retail and things in the community, that's why it's important, because that's what helps fund what we do. As you know, so far 2023, we're up. We continue to be up in first and second penny. In July, we were up 7.43%. Michelle just did give me the first half of August, and we are now 7.8% when you look at the first half of August compared to last year. When you look at entertainment tax, also the third penny down on the second graph there, in July, we were down 1.23%. With the first half of August coming in, we're now just down 1%, so we're gaining a little bit on that. But the reason why I'm not overly concerned on that entertainment tax, but we'll start with sales tax. We've, the last couple of years, exceeded our revenue from our projected budget. And as you can see, when you look to 20 to 21, you can see we budgeted a 4% increase, but we actually had a 10.2% increase in sales tax. Of course, that's coming off of COVID, but even if you go back farther. So in 2023, when we're saying we're 7% above collections from last year, you can see our budget, how do I maybe I can't do that. Oh yeah. Our budget in 23 is 11.8. Our collections last year are 13.5. So if we continue to be above last year's collection, you're going to see that we're going to collect almost $2 million additional in revenue that's unanticipated. As long as our other revenue stays where it's at and our expenses are within budget, we should have a plus balance at the end of this year. The same thing with entertainment tax. I know we say we're down, but we're down from last year's collections. Last year's collections was 974. We only budgeted 845, so I still believe that we're going to meet our projected budget for 2024. Even at 1%, if we stay at 1% below last year's collections, we'll still be 35,000 above that number. So for the 2024 proposed budget, the items that I plan on overviewing with you today is just our proposed revenue, our proposed expenditures, where we're at with our cash balances, what those capital items are that are requested in the budget, and then have council have a general discussion about the future meetings and any other information you're going to want to see. Our proposed general fund budget. In our general fund budget, property tax is 28% of our total revenue, and sales tax is 47% of our total revenue. So again, when you hear me talking about sales tax, that's why it's important to us, because it's about 50% of what we get in as a whole. In the budget, we have projected that revenue will increase 10%. Property tax is projected to increase 3%. That would be the CPI. It's actually limited to 3%. And then we have a 10.6% projected sales tax increase. But again, that's from last year's budget, not from 2023 collections. So we're budgeting a 10.6% increase from the 23 budget, not from collections. So that amounts to, we have about $5.4 million in property tax and $13 million in sales tax. I've had a lot of people ask me about interest. We did increase our budget for interest, but not to the level of 23 because our contract is up for renewal, and we believe it's likely going to go down from where it's at now, but we do have $675,000 budgeted in general fund for interest. The other items, and the thing to keep in mind is that's new for us. We haven't had that revenue stream in the past, and if interest rates go down, that's also going to have to be reduced. The other sources of revenue would be grants, fees and charges, reimbursements, and we also receive some state funds for specific uses, like our road maintenance and that kind of stuff. Our special revenue funds include park, entertainment tax, E911, community services, nutrition and lake. Our entertainment tax is projected to increase, again, but that's from last year's budget, not last year's collections. And you will see park fund is budgeted to increase, 911 just about flat. Community services is up a little bit, but that's from they're getting additional funds from general fund. Nutrition's about flat, and lakes going down. In 2023, we budgeted SRF revenue, and we're taking that out, and now we're just budgeting the additional funds needed for the drawdown, and we have some cash applied, and we'll talk about that later. Enterprise fund budgets, those are really pretty flat. You'll see some really big changes. Oh, geez, I don't know why entertainment tax was still on that one. Sorry about that. Oops, hold on. Okay, golf course. The only reason why you see a decrease in the golf course revenue is because last year we transferred $550,000 out of the general fund into golf course. You take that out and it looks like revenue is going down, but it's actually not. It's just that transfer. And then water and sewer look like they have huge decreases, but that's because the 2023 budget, we had revenue from our state revolving loan projects. So we're taking that loan revenue out of the budget now. Expenditures, here you can see the total budget's decreased about 53% from 2023, so we're down 61 million. But again, the largest decrease there is also in, as you can see, the water and sewer accounts. The gold bar down, the red bar significantly down, taking out those SRF projects. The budgets that increased were community services, Corn Palace, E911, entertainment tax, general fund, Lake Mitchell and Park. And the decreasing budgets would be the airport, campground, EMS, golf course, indoor pool, debt service, indoor pool, debt service, nutrition, sanitation, sewer, and water. Some of those decreasing budgets is, for example, in the campground, we had an emergency shelter that was budgeted. We took that out. EMS, we had a couple ambulance replacements that we had taken out. Golf course, obviously, we're not doing phase 2 again, so that's removed. Sanitation, the recycling building was removed. And then, like I said, those major utility projects have been removed. So our transfers out from general fund to the different other funds, you'll see. Transfer out to park is going down a little bit. It's still higher than it was in previous years, but we're going down to 2.9 million. Transfer out to lake is going up a little bit. We have an additional $500,000 for the Jetty Marina project construction, and then 995, 737 for the Lake Mitchell project drawdown. Those are both coming out of designated capital funds, and the remainder for the Lake Mitchell drawdown is going to come out of the Lake Mitchell fund. So you'll see that in cash applied. And then the other ones that you see there, EMS, 911, Corn Palace, Community Services, Airport, those are just really to balance their fund in operations. I will point out, I don't have the exact dollar amount, but we went down about $35,000 in our transfer out to Corn Palace, so we're down to $117,316 for general fund support.
Can I ask you a question on the golf course? So will we be able to cover the full 780,000 out of this year's, the 2023 budget?
No, I'll show that in the budget. We're doing cash applied out of their fund, but that'll be in the cash applied. Anything that's already, I should have maybe started that even for the new city councilors too. If a project is budgeted in 23 and it's not completed, it will get basically supplemented into the 24 budget after we start the 24 year. So we don't budget those capital items twice. They just go through a supplemental procedure in March. So a lot of those water and sewer utility projects, we're not done. We're still paying the bills, but they're going to be moved next year because it's not a new project that we're funding.
But I think that's my question, that we budgeted.
Yep, the difference is 180,000, and I'll show you where that's coming from in the Bell Fund. Yep, I have that called out, actually. And here we go. Here's our proposed cash applied for each, I'm going to pull this up, actually. If you look on your, I'm not sure if I can get out of here. On the general fund overview sheet, and this is more for new council too. See if I can do this. So down here on the bottom, it shows everything where cash is being applied towards projects. So you'll see the breakout for the general fund cash applied out of restricted funds. To the right, it says other funds cash applied, so it shows you what that cash is being applied for. We have airport cash applied, Corn Palace, operational for the community services fund. Get down to the lake. No, not lake, golf fund. Here's the golf. Towards phase 2 golf course, they're applying 168.41 out of reserves. The other 20,000 is coming out of their operational revenue. See if I can make this thing go back up. Nope. Okay, so out of the cash applied, a couple items to note. We have 5 out of the general fund, future capital projects. We have 500,000 going towards the Jetty Marina construction, 995, 737 going towards Lake Mitchell drawdown. Out of the Lake Mitchell fund, we budgeted in 2023 to transfer. We had designated cash for the matching funds required for the Jetty Marina. That's already being transferred in 23, so we're going to apply that towards the budget in 24. And then the remainder, the 2.5, would be towards the drawdown construction.
And I see, it's a little thing, but the campground, it says we have a
Negative?
negative.
That's because the revenue is higher than the expenditures, so they'll add to the fund reserves. Yep.
That just goes back.
Yep. It's any cash above or any revenue above expenditures in that fund will stay in that fund.
That's a nice little thing.
And actually, I don't think they'll probably end up putting money into the reserve because they haven't done that shelter project, and they'll probably need that in 24 to balance that project, so, but that's just
Nice that they made.
on the budget, it shows that way. This sheet here shows you the estimated cash balances for each of our funds, general fund, the estimated balance at the end of 2024, which would be 38% of the 2024 proposed revenue. I did talk about in the budget overview, and we can talk about that a little bit more if council wants to, that you could designate additional funds in 23 into your future capital project funds to bring that percentage down a little bit. I just did a rough calculation. If you designated another $1 million, that would bring you down to 33%. So that's kind of what we were talking about before, Mike, where we kind of do it after the fact versus budgeting into. Well, knowing where we are now, you could do additional funds into that future capital project fund. And if we end the year if we end the year 7% up from last year, you're likely going to have more that you're going to be able to designate depending on what happens with the rest of the revenue in the budget too. Utility accounts, they look high, but also we have projects coming out of there too, and we're going to be starting some internal projects versus having everything financed. So even though those dollars maybe look high, I think that's just kind of a temporary thing till these projects get rolling. We have capital improvements. I did give you a full list, but I was just going to highlight some of them. Our total proposed capital projects are $14,344,000. You can see those broke out by fund. Obviously, the lake having $6 million with jetty construction as well as the drawdown construction. General fund, we had, oh my goodness, $5.5 million. I can't read that far away. $97,718. Park and Rec, there's a significant amount in there, $953,000, over almost $1 million. Water, sewer, entertainment tax fund, that would be related to streetscape items. Golf, that would be the remainder of the funding needed for phase 2, as well as some equipment purchases that they have. Community services, E911, and campground. Campground is a dock. E911 is some upgrades to their equipment for dispatch. I also, on your capital improvement sheet, I give you this breakout that shows just how much we're spending by category of improvement. So you can see that the majority of them are coming in as facility improvements this year, and then infrastructure and equipment is last. I will say when we get to the capital list, we do have a lot of equipment items on there, but those are the items that have been cut the last 5 years as we've tried to balance budgets. So it may look like a lot of little items, but that's because those are usually the first things that have been cut in balancing budgets. And these are just capital projects that are shown that are over $300,000. West End Bridge Maintenance Project, chip seal, pickleball courts are in the budget. 4th, 2nd, and Railroad. And there's a couple different categories there, storm drainage, and then we've got some overlay on that as well. Other overlay projects, 7th and Main signal lights, Lake Mitchell Jetty and Marina, and Lake Mitchell Drawdown. In your capital projects, I also gave you a full list, but here's just a real brief look at some of the infrastructure items that are included in the budget. They're listed in, obviously, dollar amount order. And then we have the facility improvements. Some of these items that are listed as facility improvements are also being funded by outside funds, not general fund supported. A lot of them, and then some of them have grants tied to them as well. And then equipment, like I said, we have a lot of items listed on equipment. You may wonder why we have 3 different Chevy Tahoes listed for police. The last 4 years, Mayor, I think it is, we've only done 1, and they've been used vehicles. So we're to the point where we're supporting replacing some of those with newer vehicles. And you can see the rest of the items listed as well.
What's that total?
Excuse me?
What is the total?
The equipment total was right here. 2.1 million. So like I said, it looks like a lot of little stuff, but these just show you alternate, it should say funding of capital projects. So we had $1.6 million of grant or donation support, and you can see those listed there. We got a big grant for the maintenance work on West End Bridge. We're hoping, or we applied for a state grant towards the pickleball court, and we're expecting some donations to be received as well. We have the EDA grant towards the jetty and marina construction project. And then Jessica will have to correct me on the correct language, but we always get that DOT funds for some of the equipment that she budgets for. So those are the budgeted revenue to offset that. And then we have projects that are also using what we call restricted revenue, wouldn't be just sitting in the fund reserve. So the park fund is using donations that they receive towards youth improvements at the rec center. So that's $98,000 of their improvements. The Lake Mitchell Jetty project, we've already transferred $1 million last year. We're doing another $500,000 this year. The drawdown construction project, that's coming out of the lake fund, but when we sold the Kelly property, those funds were dedicated that they had to be used towards the lake, so it is for a dedicated purpose. The equipment upgrades in E911, and then 4th, 2nd, and railroad improvements.
I see that we did receive the pickleball grant.
Did we?
I haven't worked on that.
Yeah, we haven't heard that yet. No, we just, it's included in the budget. So, like I said, we applied for it.
If we don't get it, then it will back out.
Yeah. So you would either have to, use $195,000 out of contingency or decide not to do the project if you don't get the grant. But right now, we have the grant revenue and the donations budgeted for the pickleball courts. We have, like I said, we just applied, we haven't been notified yet.
I see that up there.
Yep. And then our STIP projects are listed as well. There's 2 professional services projects included in the proposed budget. One is the design of the gun range that would be located up by the wetland. That would come out of the general fund. Is that right, the cost, Joe? 500,000? No, I have, this should be 100,000.
Correct,
I don't know why I have 500 on there. Sorry, fix that.
Oh, design,
Yeah, the design is just,
500,000 is
Yep.
the actual cost that would be associated with it.
yeah, so, oh geez, hold on. I am not a PowerPoint person. So the gun range design in your capital improvements, if you look at professional services, it's listed at 100,000. So I'm not really sure why. Oh, I know why, because then,
That's the actual building of it.
yep, then we would need an additional $500,000 from general fund if you move forward with it.
The numbers just got switched.
Yep. And then the design of Fifth Avenue from Burr to Foster, he's got that split between water and sewer fund. Sorry, I didn't catch that earlier. So the subsidy application process, we did notice of the subsidy applications. We posted it on the city's website on June 26th. The application period officially opened on July 1st, and applications were accepted until July 24th at 5 p.m. This year, it is different than previous years. The proposed budget does not include any funding for the subsidy applications. In the past, the committee reviewed those applications and suggested a funding level as part of the proposed budget. This year, it was proposed that the entire council go through the review process as part of the budget work session, including review of the applications and the financials that were submitted like the committee used to do. Those applications and the financials would be part of a public meeting and available to the public as well. The reason why I say that is that one of the measures that the committee has used in the past is the fund balance level of that and profit and loss statement of that subsidy request compared to what the subsidy level has been. And another note is just because the budget that is currently proposed is structurally balanced, which means any subsidies that are going to be awarded or added will result in, we're going to have to decrease a proposed budget elsewhere in the general fund or in transfers to the other funds that receive general fund support in order to maintain that structurally balanced budget. Just for council's overview, this year we received $694,250 worth of subsidy applications. Last year, we funded $627,000. As far as a breakout,
Go back into that one more time. That includes includes CVB.
That's everybody, all subsidies, yep. And I'll walk through the breakout next. So here's your breakout. And as you can see in the general fund, last year we did 377,000, but the previous year was 310. In 2023, you guys added a subsidy to Mahi to help that program start of 75,000. So I just want to point out that normally we weren't at that 377. You were on a lower level, closer to 300,000. And then this year, the general fund subsidy requests are $419,250. I will point out Big Friend, Little Friend, it's shown in gray. Their application was actually received after the period closed, so council could just reject that application for not following the application procedures. Big Friend, Little Friend. The subsidies that are increasing the request from 2023, Dakota Counseling requested an increase of 102% or $13,250. LifeQuest requested an increase of 13% or $1,000. CASA was not funded last year, so theirs would be back at $2,000. Mitchell Prehistoric Indian Village requested a 46% increase or $6,000. Mitchell Main Street and Beyond requested a 43% increase or a $15,000 increase. The only subsidy that we don't fund out of the general fund would be the Convention and Visitors Bureau. They requested a 10% increase or an additional $25,000. So like I showed you earlier, we received $694,250 worth of applications. Last year's level was $627,000, noting that you had a new subsidy of $75,000 to Mahi. What we need to talk about today, and we can do that after we go through budgets or wherever you guys want to take this next. I had tentatively set aside September 11th as a work session to go through subsidies. What has happened in the past, and I don't think should happen this year, is that some of the subsidies were given opportunities to come up and speak, and other ones were invited to do the same. So I think if you're going to do this as a full council and you're going to look at the financials on the board with everybody here, and you're going to go through the applications with everybody here, if you're going to invite one of them to speak, I think you invite all of them to speak, so you're being consistent. I don't think it should be just if one person pulls somebody out. You know, if you're going to do it in a public way, you should do it consistently for everyone. I guess this time, I just wanted to know from council how you want to proceed with that. As I showed you at the beginning, this is what I had set aside for dates. If you want to consider something else, I was asked about subsidy funding levels of other cities. Council has had me do a comparison at different times over the years. I can tell you that consistently, first-class municipalities typically fund some way they fund economic development, whether if it's a small city, they do it internally. Otherwise, they fund their economic development corporation and a Convention and Visitors Bureau or a Visit Yankton or whatever that tourism-based industry is. So that's pretty consistent. When you get down to the list of the other subsidies that we have, I couldn't tell you consistently how anyone does it. I do know that, like, even the level that we fund economic development when we combine all of ours together is different than other cities. You know, everybody's different, so it's what's the needs of your individual community. Not everybody funds their Main Street. I don't think anybody else gave a separate subsidy to regional the last time I looked. So I can certainly do a survey of the other cities and see what subsidies they're funding, what process they're using, if council wants me to go that way. I did look the last time I did the economic development and CVB comparison was 2022. So that was the last time we did that comparison. At that time we were high on economic development, but consistent with CVB. So, and by economic development, it would be adding everything together under that tab. Together, because that's what we're classifying as economic
We'll do
development.
that on the 11th then?
That's up to council, so that's what I'm looking for direction tonight.
I think we should just discuss it amongst ourselves, so we don't have to have 15 different organizations up here begging for money. We can do it amongst the 8 of us, I think, probably the best.
You don't think we need to listen to them?
You've heard them before. Or maybe you guys have.
I feel like that they deserve an opportunity to,
They deserve their day in court, whatever.
Whatever the majority wants.
Could we limit their speaking time?
You can do whatever you choose to do. The work sessions are really just council work sessions. You are not required to let any public speak at the work sessions. It's when you get to the budget hearings where that requirement comes in. So you guys get to determine what you want your rules to be.
I don't have a problem giving them a finite amount of time, but not giving them a.
You got 3 minutes?
Yeah.
You may remember how long it took each one. 3 minutes, not very much.
No, I was thinking maybe 5 at least.
So if somebody has a question, is that cut it under 3 minutes?
I know.
It's up to us to decide, I guess.
I think 5 minutes, and then we would just have to save questions till the end of their presentation, I think would probably be the best. And then any presentation subject to whatever questions we have, I would think. So don't be the kid that asks a bunch of questions at the end of class.
This is obviously your first time at this. I'm just kidding.
And if they take too much time, that may affect our decisions.
So is everybody okay with that date, the 11th at 6 o'clock? Sometimes you guys have moved it earlier. We can do that if necessary. I know Marty's got a ways to drive, so I didn't want to move it up. And then I would invite them each for a 5-minute presentation. Like I said, I do think it's important that you bring up those financials for everybody to see. We ask it as part of their application process. You do have several of those applications who their profit and loss is 3 and 4 times more than what they request in subsidy from you. So you're really contributing to that profit. So I think that because you are talking about tax dollars, it's important to bring that up and review that as part of the process as well. Sounds like a yes. I'm not here to know, so I'm going to go with a yes. Does any?
That's good. So it's back on the 11th.
Yep. What about the other dates that I've had these in staff reports for you? I want to make sure everybody sees that's okay. Typically in the past, we haven't used this many, but and we can go through questions tonight, and we probably even have time on September 11th, but I just want to make sure that nobody sees a conflict with any of the times listed as they are. Okay. Well, that was my general overview. Like I said, I do have these go into the 2 narrative overviews that I provided do go into a lot more detail, and I will post these online under this work session, so anybody can go back and look at it, and I will send out my PowerPoint. But I just wanted to really have that as a way to do a first overview so we could get into questions now. For clarifications or, Susan, I think we got your questions answered now, didn't we?
Well, I kind of just asked as we went along.
Yeah, I want to make sure I answered them though, didn't I? I think we got yours answered.
We do
Okay.
have the parts of the Main Street improvement I see in the budget. Part of that is, I suppose, are we being televised?
Yep.
So for Main Street, part of it is coming out of the water and sewer accounts. And then the other part, we had, 30,000 that was for Main Street improvement.
Yep. So
Can you talk?
the way that is budgeted is, hold on. I'm going to get to that capital list. Just this might be easier. Actually, you know what? I got a better idea. So the amount that comes out of water would be water improvements, the water infrastructure, because at the same time that they're doing those improvements, they're also replacing pipes and they're improving the storm drainage and everything else. So any of the items listed under those specific departments. So here you've got the overlay, that's coming out of general fund. That's all the overlay after the work is done underneath. So here you've got your storm drainage improvements for 520,000. Out of this 965 for the overlay, we are using, do you have Pam at the ocean? 455,783 out of money that we had designated for other road projects. So it's not coming out of operations that would come out of that designated account. Here's your water main improvements for 250,000. And then you've got 265 for your wastewater. And then I tentatively had, I believe, storm drainage there. Oh, that's third and main, I apologize. I'm gonna have to make this bigger. Let me pull this up.
And I see that you've included railroad on this, so it's for
Yep.
Second and Railroad, which is great.
Yep. And then in the entertainment tax, I at the time didn't have a budget, a dollar amount, so I have $250,000 in the entertainment tax budget. Hold on, where'd that all go? That would be used towards the streetscape items. Man, I can't get this to work. I might have, oh, here we go. So the streetscape or the entertainment tax is paying for things like the landscaping and the irrigation and that kind of stuff. Main Street and Beyond, out of their bid district number 3, they pay for features. So like at Third and Main, they're paying for the big planters that are going there. They're paying for the seat wall. They're adding benches and the trash cans, things like that. So that's all coming out of their Main Street bid. We had a lot of conversation about last year about those signal lights at First and Main and Seventh and Main that get hit routinely by vehicles, I think touring and damaged. In order to balance the budget this year, the initial request, and if you're going through your capital improvement sheet, you'll see what the requested budget was. That's directly from the department heads. And then what we have in the proposed budget. So as you go down that list, you'll see any items that were cut in order to balance the budget. So here we have an air compressor in the street department that was cut. We had the new public restroom facility at the cemetery by the veteran cemetery, that was cut. A payloader that was going to be shared with golf out of the cemetery budget was cut. We have library, they wanted to get a new microfilm reader. We are trying to investigate about converting their existing microfilm to digital so we won't have to maintain 2 different kinds of software or 2 different types of technology, I guess you'd say. Normally, there's a lot more that's already been cut out of here. You'll see the, oh wait. The Gainer Park. We have the Gainer Park playground equipment. That was cut largely because we're doing the city's portion of the pickleball courts. Like I said, normally you would have seen, that's the other half of the payloader that came out of cemetery. We also took it out of golf. So normally you're going to see a lot more cuts than this. when you guys are seeing your initial department or proposed budget. But that's because we've made cuts out of capital in order to put subsidies in at the previous level. Like I said, over the years, we're getting to the point now where a lot of that equipment, we don't have I guess we don't have the luxury of continuing to push things off too much farther. We're utilizing quite a bit of our contingency annually. Some of that is emergency repairs on some of the equipment. If you look on your fund overview sheet that I handed out to you today, it does show you the history of contingency, what the budget versus actual has been. So you can see in 2022, we spent almost 100% of our contingency. 21 we did. 2019, we were spending less than previous years, but we're getting to the point where we're having a lot of just equipment issues and repair and maintenance items from deferring some of these longer term maintenance. A couple other items to just keep in mind that came up during our meetings with department heads. We do know we have some other major items coming up. At some point, we're going to have some HVAC equipment replacement at Corn Palace that's going to need to be done. We talked about a future fire truck need. We have things like that that are also going to be coming down in the next probably 3 to 5 years.
Stephanie, I'm sorry, I have to
Yep.
ask you to repeat something. Tell me again what we're doing at the 1st and 7th signal lights,
Oh, I don't think I finished it. Sorry, I started. You're right. You need me to repeat it because I don't think I finished it, Susan.
Well-
So last year, we had budgeted those 2 lights, and I think originally we were looking at $600,000 or $700,000. That cost estimate now is $1.2 million. Because of that, we needed to present a balanced budget, so in the meetings with the mayor, the decision was to move we're only doing the 7th Street
7th
one.
Street.
The
First
first one
Street was
would
cut
have to
out,
be.
7th Street is proposed to be in the budget.
And so the 1st Street will remain
As it is,
as
or,
it is? Is it a light?
or other
it's not?
options according to the traffic study.
The plan is to keep it as is for now.
And as is, I'm trying to think, it's a light there?
Yes,
Correct.
And-
1st and 7th are the only places there are lights.
Right, so on 7th, what are you going to do there? What will be put in instead?
We'll replace with lights again in a location where they will not be hit.
So they'll be higher or off to the side? or-
They'll be further away horizontally.
And then overhead.
Okay.
The overhang isn't there now, is it? On 7th?
No, those are straight up.
No,
They still get hit when they're straight up like that?
it's the base that gets hit often.
Yeah, so when the trailer goes by, the trailer will clip the pole.
So that-
I will show you because I did have Joe put this together. Here's a map of our chip seal projects for 2024 that are included in the budget. We did not cut anything out of those. Why does this do this, Joe, every time I try to pull it up? My computer does not like his PDFs. You can't even see it, that's so small, can you? Okay, we'll scroll from top to bottom. So there you can see the work around the lake area. Anything with the red line would be your chip seal roads for 2024. What? Susan, do you have a question that you'd like to ask?
Yes, I was just asking if Sawgrass is making the list for next year.
I believe you'll see that on the mill and overlay
Yep,
list.
that's my next one.
The mill and overlay, good news. The neighbors say.
Oh, shoot, hold on. Trying to find my other map here, hold on. I need new glasses. It is so bad. Oh, we'll do it this way instead. We did have a breakout of the overlay projects here, you can see. So we've got Wisconsin, 12th to 15th, Wallace, Hanson to south, Kippis Cove, Sawgrass, Quince west of Miller, and First from Burr to Main. I do believe I have a map too. I'm just having trouble pulling it up. Oh, here it is. Yes. Okay. So here's our overlay map. And again, you're looking at the items in red. We are doing 2 different sidewalks that are included in the sidewalk budget listed on your capital improvement project. This one is the one at the golf course cemetery. And then we also have the sidewalk at the dog park. We do have one parking lot that's included in the budget, and that would be this one shown here at the lake.
That's the old boat ramp for reference.
And those are all
By the Indian
listed,
Village.
those are all listed individually on your capital improvement sheet.
Are we doing any neighborhood sidewalks next year? Do we have any sidewalk projects that are happening next year?
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Is your mic on?
Yep. Terry put a list together, which I haven't shared with Stephanie yet, but it's in the budget. We're hoping to bring forward our sidewalk plan and have council give us direction on which areas they'd like us to move forward with as far as assessment projects go and ADA panels go. Terry's old plan that you've seen before, we're getting close to being complete with it, so then we can start on the next phase of improvements.
In the past, we've taken kind of a tour, rented a bus or gotten one of the city buses, and we've kind of driven around and looked. Is there any talk of doing that, just to?
Yeah, we can certainly do that. You bet.
And if you look in your budget breakout of the sidewalk construction, there is, I'm looking here, $75,000 it looks like budgeted for sidewalk assessments this year, or 2024, excuse me. What other questions or clarifications, or what other information would council like to see?
Stephanie, without me digging, I know it's.
No, you're okay.
On average, I see we're spending $5 million roughly in infrastructure this year. What have we been averaging on previous years on infrastructure?
Let me pull that up, actually. That's going to be a little bit skewed because the last 2 years, we would have showed a lot of SRF projects, so those aren't being funded out of current cash. I can get you an average, and I'll have to go through and back those other SRF funded projects out if you'd like. But last year, I can pull that up for you.
Well, the big ones were the water tower and the sewage treatment plant, right? Jim?
Oh, yeah, but you had water projects too. So if you want to look at last year's comparison, whoops, I went way too far, sorry. This is so big I can't see it. Last year's infrastructure was 63,907,000. Well, I can pull up other years too if you'd like and look through them, but like I said, that's probably not a fair comparison because we had so many SRF funded projects in there that obviously we're not funding out of our current cash, so, you know, we don't have $63 million to do every year.
You're right, yep. I definitely was focusing on, more of what's coming out of the city portion of it, not necessarily what we're getting from matching funds.
I could probably look at a 5-year history of all 3 of those categories and do a comparison for you.
I just know, from the public wise, obviously infrastructure is a huge piece of our community, and I know that is one thing that I hear from people all the time, that, maintaining our city infrastructure is something
Yep.
that we got to keep on putting several amounts of, and millions of dollars in on a yearly basis, and I want to make sure we're not short-ending ourselves for certain projects and hindering the infrastructure of the city. We are so far behind and will never, ever in our lives catch up. So sadly to say that, it's true.
I just pulled up 2022, and again, that also had some SRF projects in it, but we were 32 million in 2022.
Any other questions that we have tonight?
I see that there's a new public restroom facility in the cemetery by the Veterans Cemetery. Are there any other
That was
restrooms?
That one was cut.
Oh,
If you look at the capital improvements, that was one of the items that was removed in order to balance.
Are there any other restrooms in the cemetery that, for the public to use?
Kevin?
Yeah, they have porta potties by the door.
There's a porta potty near the garden, and then, of course, the office shop would be open from 7 to 4 each day.
I wondered if that had a restroom that people could use.
Sure.
Any more?
No, it'd just be helpful for me to know if there's information that council needs to see to help you with your decision or your decisions here moving forward. It's helpful for me to get that information ahead of time so I can start working on it and have it prepared for you for the next work session. Again, if you want to look at items that were cut from the budget, you just need to look on your capital improvement sheet, and anything that's not listed under proposed budget but was in requested budget would be an item that was cut in order to balance. I can tell you that as far as just the operational stuff like utilities, gas, oil, tires, supplies, all of that, we go through that with a pretty fine-tooth comb. We take out anything that was a supplemental appropriation from previous years, anything that was a one-time expense is backed out. So I do believe that those just general operations are down to bare minimum. The health insurance is not, there's a 0% increase in health insurance next year for employees. That's because we continue to be at or above our goal that we have for the health insurance fund. So that gives us some room for doing these other projects as well. I don't know, Mayor, is there anything else specifically in the budget that you can think of that I might have missed?
I think you got it pretty well
Okay.
covered.
Hey, can you just tell me, it's a stupid question, I'm sure, but what does CIP in proposed budget mean?
Capital improvement plan,
Ah,
Oh,
of course.
no, I
it
thought you were
is.
talking
No.
about the year.
Or in my-
No, requested budget, then no, it's going across in the capital
Where?
improvement plan. You've got
Oh,
requested budget,
yeah.
then is it?
Capital improvement plan,
And-
sorry. I thought you were talking about your
Proposed.
utilities.
then there's a CIP that's cast in
Cast iron
place
pipe.
pipe.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about his pipe. No, that's just an abbreviation for me.
Okay,
Good
got it.
acronyms.
And if you look
I
up here
know.
at the header, Susan, where it says City of Mitchell Capital Improvement Plan, fiscal year 2024.
I know, but I didn't know that that's what the CIP was. I thought, okay, CIP and proposed budget.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was just my
Means
note.
city is perfect. It
City.
means city is perfect.
It means I have too many tabs in my worksheet and I can't make the tab length any longer, or I can't find them. Was there anything anybody wanted to review on the revenue projections that we provided? I already kind of went through what we were looking at for sales tax and property tax increase. Again, we don't have our projections from the auditor yet on what our growth will be, so we could see some increase in property tax from growth. But looking back through the past 5 years, usually that's not more than 70,000, so it's not a significant change at all. Council can look at what I have included for projected revenue if you feel like sales taxes may be low, or if you think I maybe over-projected the interest, we could always reduce that down as well.
here, so.
And I guess, just so you all know too, so when we get the department requested budgets, our total revenue budgets were 49 million, and our total requested expenses was 54 million, so we were short 4.5 million to start. We're going through the budgets, we found additional revenue. I made some additional changes in expenditures. Then we brought that deficit down a little bit. In our meetings with department heads of the mayor, we have some additional revenue found. We had some additional expenses removed and added back in to get us down to where we are now with our structurally balanced budget. Expenses are 54,452,758. Revenue is 296,638, with the remainder coming from cash that's being applied from the different fund accounts. I'm open for any questions. Kevin?
Nope. Are we done? Okay, we're done till the next meeting. Which is what, the
Well, the regular meeting's Tuesday.
5th.
Because Monday's a holiday, just so you
yeah.
remember that. Or you show up, nobody will be here on Monday night.
And then the September 11th meeting is the following Monday, and it's a non-council meeting.
Right. I did put the subsidy review on a non-council meeting date just because I thought it might take more time to go through. Then typically for the new council members, those ones that we scheduled before the meeting, if council has something that they wanted to have me bring back, if you guys go through it in a little more detail, we've done them before council meetings. If you don't feel that you need those, we can always cancel those as well or start them at 5:30 instead of 5. I just wanted to have it on your calendar in case we need them. Does that make sense? Okay.
We'll be adjourned.